Yes, in an unjust world, how can we say all people have inherent dignity? Well, this is going to be a talk on race and injustice. And what is a talk on race and injustice without a quote from MLK? So here's our quote from MLK. When it comes to issues of justice, the church is often the tail light rather than the headlight in society. That was his words, taking in the context in the US with the struggle for emancipation for Black people, and yet fighting a battle not just in the political sphere, but also in the Christian sphere. And we have issues of that here in the UK too. We have a legacy where that is implicated. So clergy in the Church of England over here were receiving payments in the compensation for slavery scheme that only ended in 2015. And you might be wondering what compensation was that? Well, it was not compensation for the slaves, it was compensation for those who were being deprived of their human chattel. In that context, it's not hard to see why some people say the church has nothing to say when it comes to matters of injustice. But I have 2 points right now. My 2 points in this talk are that if you want to make the strongest critique possible to the ways in which the Christian church has been complicit in injustice in the past, the resources that you will need to do that are found within her very faith. But also, if you want to understand human dignity on the very strongest basis possible, the resources for that are also within the Christian faith. Now, in link to that, I've been on online forums where the idea of having scripture influence anything to do with justice has been rubbish, and instead the UDHR has been put forward as the platform of shared understanding of what we're looking for in the world. That should be the new Bible of a modern democratic society. So let's take a look at the UDHR. The UDHR is part of the foundation of the international human rights system. The preamble to the UDHR is the foundation for the UDHR. And the first sentence of the UDHR is the foundation for it all. So we're about to hear from the foundation to the foundation to the foundation of the modern human rights corpus. And it reads thus: recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. So catch the flow there. Dignity leads to rights. Rights lead to justice, peace, and freedom in the world. So in order for that statement to have any true weight, the concept of dignity needs to be able to carry the weight of rights, of peace, freedom in the world, of all of the laws that have been made in light of the UDHR. What is the concept of human dignity? Can it do all of these things? Well, historically, the concept of human dignity has been taken to mean different things. And by human dignity, I mean, what is it about human beings that makes them valuable, that makes them worthy of basic minimum standards of care and treatment? And in history, humans have decided and understood dignity along really different lines. So amongst them, rank and status in society, intelligence, intellect, affluence, gender, and race. And so we see in that none of these things in and of themselves can bear the weight of all that we hope for. Those are not adequate measures of what makes a person valuable. And in particular, when it comes to race, we see that not only do human rights exist to make the world more peaceful, human rights actually exist to protect humans from themselves. Humans are liable to create constructs that are false and demean other people. So where can we go with any of that? What I believe is that the concept of human dignity, as it is encapsulated within that document, is pointing to an objective reality. It's not creating the reality, it's pointing to it. It's recognizing that by the very nature of what humans are, they deserve certain things. And that isn't decided on the whim of the age or what is politically expedient. Above and beyond our whims and our wants, humans are valuable. There is an objective reality that we need to respect when we encounter the human person. Now, that idea of objective reality is not without its controversies. I don't know what worldview or background you're coming into this talk with, but for many, the idea of an objective reality is merely a tool to enslave and rob and demean other people. It's a power play. It's saying something can be true for all people at the same time. And there's a suspicion of anything that looks remotely like that. But I want to suggest that if we don't have an objective reality to work with, then all we have is humans making up reality for themselves. We decide things aren't actually as we want them to be, but we'll just pretend for the sake of expediency. We see that many people have died and been killed in the past because we don't have a proper functioning conception of the worth of human life. So we'll just pretend people are worthwhile. We'll decide between ourselves in boardrooms and at conferences, and we'll just proceed on the assumption that it's true. We won't probe it too much because we don't actually believe it has any basis in a reality beyond ourselves. Now sit with those words for a moment. I want you to consider how they make you feel. Not just whether or not you can reason them in your head, but how they make you feel. And if they strike you as quite deficient, really actually quite sad, then hear these words of scripture in their place. I'm reading from Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, right at the start of the biblical narrative. So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. Now, there are some key things from the surrounding context of this passage that you should know. The trajectory of the story here is towards a person. His name is Jesus. It's towards a cross. But beyond that, it's towards a wedding where all of humanity is reconciled in a relationship of love to God, her originator. So the context of this passage is that it starts with God, that he exists, and Father, Son, and Spirit, a triune community of love. Out of the overflow of that love, he makes the world. And in his making of the world, at the pinnacle of creation, he has a unique spot for humans. They bear the marks of his identity, and they are deeply, deeply loved by him. And what God makes humans for is for them to enjoy fellowship with himself, to be in an intimate relationship with him, for communion with him. And he's also made them to represent him in the world. Now, that is what the church does when she's at her best. She represents God in the world and she enjoys deep fellowship and communion with him. But it is that truth of who God is that she neglects when she's complicit in racism. But I also want to put to you that that is what the culture rejects when it seeks the freedom, the justice, and the peace that come from God's reign while rejecting his rule.